Alrighty, it's about 7 o'clock, so we'll get started. Thank you all for coming out tonight. Just looking for a way for us to give the residents of town, the voters, information about the fire station project so that you have that information and can make an informed decision when it's time to vote at town meeting and at the annual ballot election. First, I'd like to just take a moment to thank Marcia. I'm not sure where she just ran off to. Oh, here she is. Marcia Petrillo for opening up the Senior Center for us tonight to do this informational session. Thank you, Marcia. So this program or this project began really several years ago when questions started coming up, and shortly after I took over as chief, some people had come to me and said, what are we going to do about a fire station? How much is it going to cost? Can you renovate the current station? And I didn't have those answers because I'm not an architect, and there's a lot of work that needs to be done in order to determine the needs for a fire department going forward. So I approached the selectmen in the late fall of 2013, and we've met with them a few times over the last 18 months. So I thought what I'd do for everyone tonight is go through kind of those presentations that we've done for the board and also what we use for the finance committee as well to share that information. When I'm done, the town manager, David Genero, will talk some on the financial aspects of the project, and then we'll open it up to questions and answers. Your questions, hopefully we have answers. So this picture shows what the fire stations that we had from 1988 through 2011. The reason I picked 1988 is because that's when the South End station down on Aldrich Street opened up. Most people thought we had 3 stations, one down south, one in the center, and one in the north. We really have a 4th one, which is this garage that's kind of hidden behind the town hall and the current center fire station, where we do keep apparatus. At the time in 2011, you can see we had the tanker in the back station and the forestry pickup truck. In 2013, we had closed the North End station. That closed in 2011 just due to the expense of trying to keep that station open. We really couldn't afford to heat it. So we moved the engine, a single engine that was in that North End station, down to the center station. You can see engine 3, which was down in the south end. We had to put that in the back station because that's the only engine that would fit back there, and we didn't have room in the front station either. So that kept us at 3 engines, but we had to put that in the back station. This is a picture of the location of all of our calls for 2012. We also did do pictures in 2013 and 2014 subsequent, but this was the information we had at the first meeting with the Board of Selectmen. The green squares are the locations of our calls. The red dots are the location of the 2 fire stations that are currently open. And you can see the majority of the calls are in the center north area of town. Geographically, looking at this picture as well, you can see that the 2 stations, if you're going to go with a 2-station model, pretty much cover a good portion of the town of Uxbridge. Also important because we're a combination fire department. That means we have a few career people on duty. We only have 2 on duty overnight. So we're supplemented by on-call firefighters and EMTs who come out to assist us when we have a fire call, or if we have a second ambulance call, they staff the second ambulance from home. So it's important when we look at this to understand where they're responding from in relationship to the stations. And the red dots are the locations of the firefighters' homes, and the green smiley faces are the location of the stations. So what were some of our challenges back in 2013 that we were looking at? First challenge was the location of the apparatus. When we purchased the ladder truck in 2002, we knew that it was not going to fit in the center station, but the chief at the time wanted to buy the apparatus that was right for the town with the intent of putting that down at the South End station. At the time, we had a lot of firefighters down in the South End, so we didn't really have too much of an issue of getting that truck out. But if I go back to the location of our personnel, here's your South End station, you can see we have very few people in today's world who can respond from there. Now the ladder truck is a very important piece of apparatus. It's probably, in my mind, the key. While the engine pumps the water that we need to put the fire out, the ladder is a tool which allows us to have an appropriate attack or to try and manage that fire situation. You can see here they use it to ventilate. This was the unfortunate fire right next door here, the bank building in the summer a couple of years ago, where they're breaking out the windows from the tip of the ladder so that the water streams from down below, because the fire was in the attic on the 3rd floor. So they had to open up those windows to get access to the fire. And then use the ladder again from the front of the building to, once it burned through the roof, to actually extinguish the fire. And of course the ladder, you need it to, for rescues, should anybody be trapped on a 2nd floor or higher. So it's very important that that ladder truck, from a tactical perspective, gets on scene very early, if not the first truck on scene. As a result, and it was just a couple of weeks before this fire, and it was actually on the day that of the Albee Road fire, we started bringing the ladder truck down to the center station in nice weather so that our on-duty personnel who staffed the center station could get that on the road quickly if needed. On this particular day, if we didn't have it down in the center, we wouldn't have gotten it, because the 2 people that were home in town that day from the South End were up in the center of town and responded into the center station. Another challenge is our apparatus bays. You can see that the height is challenging on the size of the trucks, and every piece of equipment that we have to buy, we have to size down so that it can fit in the station. So it kind of handicaps us on the equipment that we can purchase and some of the efficiencies that we'd be looking to make in having to undersize the trucks. If you remember early on, I had said the forestry truck was in that back garage behind the headquarters, and when we closed the North End station, we had to move an engine into there. We ended up having to put the forestry behind the engine in the center station, which, besides being a tight squeeze, when we get a brush fire call, we got to pull the engine out, pull the forestry out, put the engine back in before we can respond. And then a picture of the back station. It's a really tight fit back there. And because of the ramp that leads up into that back station, like I mentioned earlier, engine 3 is the only engine out of the 3 that we can fit into that back station. This truck is scheduled to be replaced in 2020. And if we're in the same quarters that we are, we'll be looking at trying to do something on a truck to get it to fit into the station before we can really look at what we can do to improve any of our efficiencies. The parking for responding personnel, again, I mentioned we're a combination department. A lot of our firefighters and EMTs come in from home, so we need to have areas for parking. At the time, we were utilizing the old post office lot right next door to the fire station because the old post office building was empty. We also used that to park our ladder truck. But even at that point, it was somewhat limiting for us, especially keeping in mind that behind this station, we've got a garage with a tanker and an engine that need to come out and around and get out onto the street. And pictorially to show that, the apparatus coming out at the time, we would come across into the old post office parking lot and swing out, because trying to make this swing through that alleyway is difficult, especially if the responding personnel are parking their cars here. Storage, I didn't forget to put a picture here. It just kind of denotes that we really don't have a whole lot of storage or any storage within the current headquarters station. Second floor accessibility, all of our business offices, my office, the fire inspector, the meeting room, any place that we could meet with the public, it's all on the second floor. And the only way to get up to the second floor is a wooden stairwell in the back. There is no meeting room down on the first floor. So if somebody who comes into the station that may be unable to go up to the second floor, we'd have to either come over to the senior center or over to the town hall to meet with them. So our proposal at the time to the Board of Selectmen in October of 2013 was to form a committee to develop the options for fire department facilities. And to do that, we were going to utilize an architectural firm to assist us with that study. And then we would use money from the Virginia Taft bequeathment. Virginia Taft, when she passed away in her will, she bequeathed $146,000 to the fire department and the ambulance department. And the written intent of that was to be used for a building project. And we felt that this study to determine what we would need for fire headquarters met that intent. And the goal was to have plans ready for a potential building project for 2016. And the reason for that goal, and the town manager will go into it a little bit further, was to try and do this project without having to ask for an increase in taxes. So then we met with the Board of Selectmen in December of 2014, and this was after we had done, the board at that time in October authorized the town manager to appoint a committee to begin a feasibility study and start looking at fire department facilities. So we gave them an update in December of 2014, just before Christmas. This is a picture of the fire station from 1946 that we pulled out of Chief Albin's book, Chief Albin in the back. And this is a picture of the station today, the same setup with the apparatus on the ramp. And I'm not sure that you can really see. Missy, can you get the light switch? So back in 1946, obviously you can see that the apparatus was smaller. And you can see the width of these columns and the barn doors that open inward. And today, when you look at this picture, obviously it's overhead doors now. We no longer have the barn doors. But these columns are much narrower. So when those overhead doors were put in, they had to shrink down those columns in between. Okay, Missy, you can put the lights back. One of the things to keep in mind in looking at those columns is that came out in a structural engineer's analysis of the current station when we looked whether we could renovate that or not. And by going to those thinner columns, the shear strength on the front of the building is drastically reduced because of that. But anyway, so you can see from here, the apparatus has grown over the years. They've done what they can to the current station to fit the modern apparatus in, and we're still running into trouble. Also, you can see that 70 years ago, there wasn't a whole lot of sidewalk between the apparatus when it was pulled out in the road. Today, these aren't pulled out all the way, and they're right up to the edge of the sidewalk. We're just looking at some plans from the planned reconstruction that the state's doing of South Main Street in like 2019, 2020. Their road plans, the road layout actually has this pushed back another foot, so we would lose another foot off of that ramp, which would make it basically impossible to pull out a piece of apparatus without it being partway into the roadway. So we're trying to show how every inch is being used, and again, this isn't staged. Missy, can we get the lights again? This is in the ambulance bay. This is the back ambulance that's pushed all the way to the back. Down here is the station water heater. It's probably 6 to 10 inches between that and the ambulance, which is always a danger that my fear somebody's going to bump that and create a water emergency in our station. And up top is a heater. It's about a 4-inch clearance, so we have to stop that ambulance before we would hit that heater inside. This is in between the two ambulances, that one bay. You really can't walk behind that without stepping up onto the bumper. And the front of the ambulance, which is just wide enough to walk through. Okay, miss. This is and I think it's a little bit of a humorous picture. This is upstairs in our bathroom area. You can see we have a urinal, a sink, and the water, the paper towel dispenser machine, all squeezed into that one corner. And again, it's just to show that really over the years we've tried to do everything we can to utilize the space to meet the current needs. And again, looking from the doorway then into the bathroom, those lockers are where the guys put their change of clothes and personal equipment, which is located right in the bathroom, right across from the toilets as well. So at this time in 2014, now if you remember back to, this is the same picture, but we've got the circle with the red X over it, because when we first started this project to when we gave the update, Sassy Fox moved into, started renting the old post office space, which took this whole area away from us. When we talked with the selectmen in 2013, we had told them, we use this, but it's not our property, and we're always subject to being cut off. So this whole parking's been taken away so that the lessee there could utilize it. So now when we bring the ladder truck down, the only place we really have to put it, because the daytime firefighters park here, is into the alleyway, the driveway from the back to the front. And yep, when you anticipating what's going to come up next, the accessibility to the back station. In the past, when we parked at the old post office, we could kind of control it. It was our own cars parking there. We could try and instruct the firefighters how to park to clear that area so we could get those trucks out. We have no control over that now, especially daytime when they're open, which requires these vehicles to have to come through here, which reduces the amount of parking that we can let our guys do, as well as if we're going to the south end for a fire and we need that tanker because we're out of the water district, we're going to have to move that ladder out of the way if it's not a structure fire, because the ladder would already be on the way. But we have a concern about being able to get those trucks out of the back station because we don't own that land, and it's difficult trying to get the firefighters parking coming in and getting those trucks out. So the committee had been put together. There was 3 at the time from the fire department and a couple of town residents. When I first went to the selectmen, one of the selectmen said to me, well, you're the fire chief, you know what you need in a fire station, why don't you just do it? And I don't view it as my department, my fire headquarters. It's the town of Uxbridge. I'm getting to the point where I'll probably be here a few years after this building is built, if it's built, and then I'll be retiring. So it's important that we involve more people, and that's why we put a couple of residents on so that everybody had input into this station. We utilized an architectural firm. We did do a request for services, and we reviewed, I want to say it was 14 or 15 architectural firms. We interviewed 4 of them, and on a unanimous vote of the committee, which, by the way, anytime we came to a vote in the committee, it was our requirement that it had to be unanimous before we moved on, because we didn't want any dissent within the committee. We wanted to make sure everybody had their voice, and we were going to work through any issues to make sure everybody felt comfortable with the solution. So we engaged with Donovan Sweeney Architects and did phase 1, which we had completed, which involved a space needs and a program design, an assessment of the current station from a renovation possibility, a site evaluation, and we're looking at phase 2 coming up of doing more work on the site to ensure that it would work out and creating a schematic design. In phase 1 for the space needs, the architects sat with the committee members and kind of went through the analysis, but also sat with former Chiefs Albin, Keeler, and Ostrowski to get their input into what they would think is needed within a fire station. After that initial go-through, it was kind of, no holds barred, let's just kind of put everything in there. it came out at 19,000 square feet. When you did a quick calculation on that from a cost perspective, it was, I think, up in the $11–12 million area without worrying about any site acquisition costs. So the feeling of all of us was it's not going to work. That's not going to be supported by the residents of Uxbridge. So we went through multiple drafts and came up with the final design, semi-final design of 14,700. It's actually now at about 14,365, I believe. And that final design would give us a drive-through garage where we could come in one end with the ladder truck and drive it right through, and also have the ability to have the apparatus face out. So if you remember the picture where we had the engine and the forestry, if those two were in the same bay, the forestry would be pointed out the other way, so that each truck, no matter what truck we needed to get, we could get it out of the garage without having to move another piece of apparatus. And the committee took a hard look at every room as we went through, you know, the 19,000 down to the 16,000. That was kind of low-hanging fruit, pretty easy. But we really went through every room in detail, to the point where we've sized the radio server and telephone room to also house the town networking equipment, which currently is in a safe in the town hall, which is an unsprinkled building. So we kind of have all of our town information on servers in a not very well protected building. So in talking with Town Hall, we've agreed we'd size that in order to pull that infrastructure over and put it in a better protected area. Some of the ways we save space, we went from having a men's room and a ladies' room to just creating a unisex bathroom. And that was in several areas within the building. And just because, I mean, some people may think that the chief's just trying to create a Taj Mahal, I just wanted to point out that out of that design, the chief's office was actually 10% smaller than what it is today. The assessment of the current station, we did have a structural engineer, electrical, plumbing, and HVAC engineers go through the current building. The two current buildings, the station in the front and the garage out back, total 6,600 square feet versus the design of 14,000, now 14,400. As we mentioned earlier, the apparatus, the inability, because of the undersized station, to purchase apparatus that really makes sense for us, that affects that ability to purchase. It affects our ability to consolidate. We just purchased, well, not just, probably 3.5 years ago now, a rescue truck. In order to get that rescue truck into the station, we had to downsize the tank that carries the water on that truck down to 300 gallons, and it's a 500 gallon per minute pump. What I envision, and whether I'm here or it's a subsequent chief, when we go to replace engine 3, which I told you is scheduled for 2020, I envision the department looking at combining engine 3 with that rescue truck, if we have new quarters, to try and take one piece of rolling stock out, get a rescue truck that can carry 1,000 gallons of water and a pump big enough that it can be used for a dual purpose, for extrication or rescue, or for a structure fire. The space in the current building for a training conference, fitness, which we don't have any fitness room today, a dining area and quarters, it's 836 square feet available, where the program design had almost 1,900 feet. I've heard a couple of comments about there's going to be a gym in the new station in that design. I'm not sure I'd really call it a gym, although I know a lot of people go to the gym to exercise. But really, it's a small fitness room, and I'd much rather have, when you look at the statistics of injuries and deaths, especially with firefighters, a lot of it comes back to fitness. We have no fitness equipment today. I'd much rather have a room where I can tell the on-duty personnel, go spend an hour in the fitness room while they wait for a call, rather than having them standing or sitting in a chair waiting for a call. So I think it's important, especially in today's world, that we look out for their health and welfare and make sure that they're in the best shape they can be. Also, and this is no surprise because the current fire station was built in 1928, it's not compliant with today's building codes. But the biggest point coming out of it was from the engineers, and especially the structural engineer and the architects, the present building is not suitable for the level of significant renovation required to make it serviceable and code compliant for the next 25 years. In today's building code, emergency buildings, special buildings like the police station, the fire station, hospitals, they need to be made somewhat earthquake-proof. And the way it was explained to us, not only by the architects we're working with, but some of the architects we had interviewed, those buildings, in the event of an earthquake or some natural disaster, should be the last building standing in the community. And the building code is raised to that level. In order to make the current fire station meet that code, if we were to do renovations in it, you'd essentially have to put a steel structure within the current station, which of course would cost a lot and take up space, of which we're already short of. And in the site evaluation, in that first phase, we did look, besides the South Main Street sites here, between the municipal lot and looking at the old post office lot, one of the members of the committee brought up that the town owned some land on Douglas Street. So we as a committee did go up there and walk it, and while it was a good sized lot, three lots making one large lot, we were concerned about the water on there. So we did have a wetland survey done, and it was good 50 to 60% anyways of that, those lots up there were wetlands, and there's really not enough upland there to build anything on. So we went back to looking at the site down here as a primary site. However, at this point, we did our space needs, but it hadn't been put together in a design yet. So we didn't know at that point whether, when you put all the individual rooms together, if it would fit on those two lots. So in December, we recommended to the board that the board authorizes to go forward with phase 2, which would give us that schematic design, would pull all those rooms together into a look at a building so we would know what the footprint would be, and we can then decide find out if it's going to fit on the preferred site now, which is downtown. And we could give a much better cost estimate at that point because we'd know the building and it could go out to a professional cost estimator. We would plan on completing that phase and review it with the appropriate people and bring it to town meeting and town election for May of 2015. We were going to fund that phase. The first phase cost $22,500, so it was a very high level look. The second phase, because you get into a little bit more detail and we would need to get into more site evaluation, the estimated cost on that was $94,500, which we were again going to take from that bequeathment. And at that point, the Board of Selectmen did authorize us to move forward with phase 2. So we went through in January and February of this year with the architect, and we came up, we went through, boy, I don't even know how many different drafts, and looked at it a lot of different ways, but came out with this is the first floor layout, where you've got the 5 apparatus bays, and we talked about the stacking deep, 2 deep. These vehicles would all come out this way and come out on the Park Street side, and these would come out on the Town Hall side. You got some miscellaneous equipment room over to the back side, and then the business offices all on the first floor. Just to look at the second floor, that would be the quarters room, 4 bunk rooms, the day room, the fitness room, and we had a little bit of extra space. This will be the radio telephone server room that I had talked about, and there was a storage area or an area that maybe we could use for some for a training area on the EMS side. This picture is up where you came in. It's a kind of an overhead look. The town hall, the proposed station, and where the old station, should this go through, once the new station's built and we moved over, the old station would be torn down in a municipal parking lot, put up in its place next door to our town hall and a little bit closer to our businesses in town. These next two pictures have kind of gotten me into a little bit of trouble, or a little bit of, had some good discussions with the Historical Commission because of the look of the building. Really, the intent of these pictures was to kind of show the elevations, you know, with the land around, and kind of what the building would look like, because we're only at the schematic point. In order to get into what we're really going to have on this building, you need to get into the construction design phase. In order to get into the construction design phase, the town would have to hire an owner's project manager. So the cost, after schematic design, the costs start ramping up really quickly to get into more detail. But anyway, so this is a look. We've already kind of changed this. Some of the feedback from the Historical Commission was, you know, why are we going to have cement looking here? Why don't we make it brick all the way around? Quick conversation with the architect. He said, yeah, we could probably work that in within the existing cost structure, so that wouldn't be that big of a deal. So this you might see as brick in between the apparatus bays. But that would be looking at the station from Town Hall. This would be looking at it from South Main, and again, I don't like the look of this. I can imagine the Historical Commission members. We don't have details in the windows and that, and I've assured them that should this project go forward, we're going to look at this front side of the building and do what we can. The intent is to make it look, fit in downtown and fit in with the town hall, not be a replica of the town hall, but to fit in nicely so that it does look good. And then these are renditions. Even though it says looking south, it's really looking from the south into the center of town, and looking at it from Town Hall, which is one of the pictures that's up in the back. So we made this presentation to the board at a meeting in March, and they approved moving forward, putting it on the town meeting warrant, and putting it on the annual election ballot, which has brought us to where we are today, trying to inform everybody about the project so everyone can make their own vote. At this point, I think I'll turn it over to David Genero, the town manager, just to talk about the finance part of it.
Thank you, Bill. Just a brief background at how all of this has got to this point. The Capital Committee actually has had the fire station on its list for a number of years, along with a lot of other projects, obviously. But this was identified as the main building concern that the Capital Committee had. Now, I mean, since we've been planning long-term debt for a number of years here, we've always kept 2018 right in our sights for any major capital acquisition or building project. The reason for this is simple. In 1996, the town underwent a school building remodel of the 3 buildings down in the center of town. That project was completed and borrowed in 1998 on a 20-year note. That's coming off in 2018. Now, the goal of this is to be able to build this building or eliminate one big capital need and have it not have any impact on your current taxation. So, you know, the first thing somebody's going to say is this going to increase my taxes? Technically, yes, it will, because what you're going to do is you're going to go, everybody who goes to the spring annual town meeting is going to vote on the appropriation part, and then a week later at the town election is going to vote on whether or not to accept the project outside of the current debt limit. The difference is, with that 98 project coming off the books in 2018, by the time we have the first year of permanent debt for the fire station, it will be offset by that particular debt coming off. So if you look at it from a tax rate perspective, this fire station at the current cost, and we have a not to exceed figure of $9,250,000. That figure includes building and all acquisition and site prep costs. So that includes every part of it. That's what we're asking for, and we're very comfortable at this point, based on our estimates, that we will be able to do it within that particular range. If say that entire amount was borrowed, it would be 50 cents on the tax rate. However, what's coming off of the school debt is 51 cents on the tax rate. So basically, the average house in this fiscal year, in fiscal 2015, is valued at $273,000. Building the fire station, assuming a 4.5% interest rate, would cost a person who was in that house at that value $136.96. However, that same person would have $139.69 coming off. So it's basically neutral. However, this is any debt exclusion is an exclusion that lasts for the life of the debt. If we want to put on new debt, it's not like an override. It doesn't last forever. We have to come back, we have to explain a new project, and we have to seek town meeting authorization, and we have to get an affirmative vote at the ballot as well. So it's a two-step process that we're going to be doing in May. So our goal in this was to be able to finally replace the station. It's pretty obvious looking at it that it's probably our worst conditioned town asset building wise, especially for a major department like fire and ambulance. That would be the number one goal of replacing. We had no other opportunity but starting it as of 2018. Otherwise, if we were going to do it beyond that, or if the debt went out this year, we would be raising your taxes and we'd be asking to raise that. We're not doing that for this. We're looking to keep it totally neutral. And, based on that, if town meeting says yes and the general election says yes, you won't notice any difference in your taxes, but overall we will finally get the station rebuilt. The existing station will be torn down at that point. And I think overall there will be a beneficial effect, especially down here on South Main, because you will have a parking lot that will directly abut Town Hall. So the parking will be a little more logical for people using Town Hall or going over to the fire station or the senior center. And the other thing we're trying to do overall, especially here where all the government agencies in town are located right here, we're trying to just basically improve the look and service of South Main, down in this particular area. And if we have the opportunity to do it and modernize the station with no net increase in taxes, we think overall it's a pretty good idea. And that's why we're here asking for your support.
Thank you, David. One other thing to keep in mind, and then I'll open up to questions and answers. Coming out of the bad economy that we had for the last few years, we're being told that the construction market is still a little bit soft, and that that may be helpful in trying to build a building now, as well as the interest rates. The town manager said it was calculated at 4.5%. The interest rates are still hanging down pretty low. So I think that's, it's a very conservative estimate, but I think it's the right way to go about it so that you don't get a surprise. So at this point, we'll open up to questions from anybody, if you have any questions. Yes, sir.
Does the plan include emergency power?
The plan does include emergency power. Right here would be an emergency generator. Automatic turn on for the station, yes.
And does it also include preemptive traffic lights?
It does. We have, I want to say it's $85,000 to $87,000 just off the top of my head 4 traffic lights there. We're not sure, the committee had some discussions, and we're not sure if we want to put traffic lights there to stop the traffic if we're responding out. We don't have them today. However, there's an important crosswalk here, and from the municipal parking lot to the senior center, we need to have traffic lights there, a crossing light there. We're not sure where this crosswalk may ultimately end up, so we're carrying money to address that, to make sure it's handled, as well as to modify, to put what's called, and this might be a trademark, but I'm going to use it anyways, an opticom system at our lights in the center of town, where basically traffic lights can be tripped by a strobe light, a special strobe light. So if we pull out of the station and we're heading north and we trip that light, the northbound traffic is going to get green light all the way through, and the southbound traffic and the side traffic are all going to have red lights until we pass through. So we can utilize that to clear the traffic out if we have to go north out of the station. So we are carrying some money. I want to say it's somewhere around $85,000 within the project for that. Right.
I mean, I go by, if you guys are coming and going, I'd say 90% of the people don't even stop.
It's tough, and one of the reasons that that's tough is because we have such a narrow, I'd have to go back a few pictures, but there's so little of a ramp space to come out in, and the line of sight isn't good, so I can't really blame the people driving on the street for not seeing us, but it is difficult, and we do have to take into account doing those lights. The downtown area, it does get congested at times, but it's also the best place for us to get to all the areas where our calls are. I mean, this intersection of 122 and 16 here allows us to get north, south, east, and west very quickly. So while we do have a little bit more congested traffic, we think we can manage it through the traffic control.
Part of your staffing is volunteer. Is there enough in this to induce people to become volunteers and stay as volunteers?
There's a slight difference between volunteer and call. Volunteers don't get paid, and on-call personnel do. I'm not sure how a building would necessarily affect that. That's more of, it's a training and an operating expense because of the amount of equipment that we're required to supply that needs to be changed every 10 years. But it's also a significant training effort that on-call personnel have to go through today. And I credit, there's some people in the room today that have gone through Firefighter 1-2 training. Basically, it's every Tuesday night, Thursday night, and Saturday for 6 months in order to get certified, which we require to be certified. We want somebody who's going to go into a burning building to really understand what they're doing. So it's not so much the building, I think. That's more of an operating budget.
I'm thinking of this from a social standpoint. Having been a volunteer fire department in New York, remember there, a big portion of it was the social environment, and that attracted volunteers.
Yeah, I think the room within here may allow for more of that. And one of the, you mentioned the social atmosphere. We have a very good combination department. I think our career people and our on-call people get along very well, both in the station. They're all members of the same association and on scene. Again, we have 2 people on duty. We can't do our job without those on-call people coming in. Is there a pool table in a room here? No, there's not, and that's some of that social atmosphere. So, yeah, some of that socialness is gone, but it's a good functional building.
But should we be adding more?
At $403 a square foot, the costs really get driven up by adding space. Somebody in the back? Jack?
What are your plans for the North Uxbridge station, which is closed, and the South Uxbridge station, which is normally used?
So the question for those watching cable at home was, what do we plan on doing with the North End station, which has been closed, and the South End station? The North End station, as I said, closed in 2011, and I think a year or so ago, we kind of officially turned it over to the Board of Selectmen. That station just has not when you look at the priority list, it hasn't been put out for sale yet, but that's the ultimate intent, is to sell that piece of property. The South End station, if we go back all the way to the beginning where we looked at our calls, and in a 2-station model it provided good coverage, we're going to still try to get on-call people where we can, especially in the South End. But also as the town grows and we start adding, if we add career people, if we're able to within the operating budget, we would start looking to staff the South End station as well. You know, I can recall a fire shortly after I took this position down in the South End beyond the South End station. And when I went back to look at the times the on-duty people were in the station, it took them almost 10 minutes to get on scene. If we had somebody in that South End station, they probably could have been there in about 3 minutes or so, maybe kept that fire from going up into the attic, and the house had to be torn down. So long-term goal, the South End station plays into my vision anyways for fire service in Uxbridge, and not only fire service but EMS service. You put an ambulance down there, those 7 minutes can make a huge difference in a medical or trauma call in the South End. So that station plays in very much in my view of what we're providing the town. Barry.
Out of that building, how many square feet is not garage, or is garage? Either one, doesn't matter. I figured it out.
Boy, yeah, I don't have that figure off the top of my head. I mean, I could take a quick look and say, well, 1, 2, 3, 4. It's probably close to 50-50 garage quarters, garage space versus the equipment rooms up here, and then the first floor and second floor business offices and quarters.
What did you say square foot it was?
The cost estimator gave us came back at $403 a square foot. Ernie?
In your figure of $9 million, does that take into account if it's not a friendly sale of that property and the town has to go into an eminent domain, the property would be a different cost?
So the question was, does the $9.25 million include if the town has to go into a hostile eminent domain in order to acquire the old post office building? As the town manager had said, the town manager has had conversations with the owner of that building, and we're comfortable that that figure of $9.25 million will cover the costs of the building as well as the costs of the acquisition.
Yeah, Bill, you talk about the cosmetic appeal of the front of the building, any changes you make, would that have any effect to the structural thing if you went from concrete to brick? In terms of earthquake proofing or things like that?
The question is, what if we try to do cosmetic things on the front of the building to make it fit in better, whether that's going to impact the structural integrity of the building? Not being an engineer and architect. Actually, we have an architect in the room. Did you want to answer that, Philip? Or?
Answer that, what you apply as an exterior, whether it be brick or precast, whatever, that's just a veneer. All the structural stuff goes on
Inside.
behind. So you basically face the building with whatever you want, with whatever budget you have to create your detail.
Right. So the question was about the outside of the building, and the answer from an architect in our audience was that it's a facade on the building, and the actual structure. Remember I mentioned about if we were to attempt to renovate the current station in order to make that earthquake proof, we'd have to put a steel structure inside. That's essentially what's going to be inside this station as well, that steel structure, and then the skin put on. It's kind of like our bones and our skin. Yes?
I'm hoping we never get an earthquake, but how big of an earthquake would this new building?
There is a factor, and I'm sorry, I don't know what, and I don't think it went to the Richter scale, but within the building code, I don't know if, Philip, do you know?
We're in a zone 2, which basically says there's something's going to happen at some point. It's not California, it's not on a, you know, San Andreas fault line, but there is, this is an earthquake zone that something can happen. It's not totally settled. So in terms of, you know, the state code, for whatever reason, and you explain it well, it just decided that this has got to be the last building standing if worst comes to worst.
I can try and find that answer out for you. If you want to stay after, just give me your name, and I can post it out on, I'm not sure everybody has Facebook, but that's one of the social ways that we can get something out. So I'd be more than happy to look into that. Yes, sir.
Was the old Gray Rock property ever considered for a fire station? I know at one time it was considered.
Right. The question is, was the Gray Rock property, which is up on the, near the corner of East Hartford Ave and Granite Street, if that was considered for a fire station? That was, I want to say, probably 6-7 years ago. The previous chief, Chief Ostrowski, was looking to build a station there to replace the North End station. He had done a lot of work and was utilizing a 3-station model. And that site, when you look at the geography of the town, was probably pretty good for a 3-station. However, you know, the tougher economic times, it's hard for us from a budgetary perspective to support 3 separate buildings. But also, you know, while nobody really likes to close a fire station, especially when it's covering an area, we really, I think, saw an operational benefit to going down to 2 stations. At the time, we had our equipment kind of dispersed amongst 3 stations, and the stations that our people would respond to were dispersed. So we had a hard time controlling the order of the trucks that would go out. For example, we've got a ladder truck, an engine truck, a forestry truck, a rescue truck, and a tanker truck. 4 of those are down at the headquarters. When I have more people coming into the headquarters building, we know we can select the order that we want those trucks to go out. So it helps us, I think, a little bit operationally, as well as that station in the north end. And I don't know what Chief Ostrowski's ultimate plans were, but if it's not a manned station, it's a couple-minute response time from here to there. So our on-call people coming in from home would probably take a couple of minutes to get there anyway. So I'm not sure that it really hampered response time to the north end.
No. Well, I got nothing to do with this fire station. I know we need a fire station. But David keeps mentioning that that's the year we're gonna have this money for different things. Why aren't we trying to acquire for parking? I see a big fire, you got 7 trucks in that station, you got a full municipal parking lot. You're not gonna be able to park in there. Why aren't we looking at this lot next door to just, I know it's
Well, if you
nothing
wanna
to do with the
handle that.
fire, but, I mean, you say you wanna change this whole end of town, just says parking. I mean.
That's an interesting question. If you've been watching any of the ZBA meetings, there has been some efforts made by the owners, the owners of the former bank building, to get that building rebuilt. The building design had to go through ZBA because there was a number of changes associated with it. They did get it through the ZBA. They're still working to see, as they still have not fully decided as to whether or not they're going to rebuild the building. I need to see what they want to do in that regard. So at this point in time, because they've put the effort into the design, into doing everything else for it, you know, that ultimate decision will be up to them. If for whatever reason they chose not to build the building, it would be something that we would consider, but everything has to work together to make that work. And we are looking at other alternatives as to how to deal during the construction period, which is going to be obviously a little bit difficult when we have the loss of that particular parking lot while the building's going up. We're going to have to look at other possibilities in order to accommodate the traffic. But up to this point, we're starting with getting the approval and then working with the owner of the other parcel, and then we're going to just see where everything goes from there. So I won't say that we won't talk about it, can't say that we will either because it's not really in our hands at this particular point.
You mentioned, that's why
Sure.
I asked the question.
Absolutely.
And just to follow up, I do, from the point that I can control, you mentioned the parking for the firefighters responding. We put some spaces here for the on-duty personnel, the career people, and we've identified, we had them do a double deep back here. So you've got 5 lanes here, 2 cars deep, so we can get 10 cars into there from our responding personnel. Plus with the bigger apparatus going out, the turning radius will allow them to make that turn, but we've got space along this wall. The ambulances and the smaller vehicles can get out this backside. So will we get...
They're 22 feet long nowadays, so those spaces are gonna have to be like 50 feet.
These, oh, what do you mean, the pickup trucks? Yeah, they're 18 feet or so, but yeah, so we've tried to accommodate that within here, that we can put as many of the responding firefighters in here. Most of our on-call people are nights and weekends, where this, at least the nights anyways, wouldn't be utilized a whole lot. The weekends would be utilized by the businesses downtown. But we've tried to address the parking for the fire station as well on those lots.
Now, is that entrance pretty much coincide with the entrance?
The entrances, yeah, Ben Sherman, the DPW director, took a look at it, and these are pretty close to opposite of each other. The entrance into the parking lot here at the Senior Center. Yes, sir.
This is just a comment, thanks for providing this, and this is a project, in my opinion, is long, long overdue, and I think people in the town should support this project.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, all we can do is give the information. Any other questions? Yes? Yes? Yes?
You were talking about the possibility of replacing 2 pieces of equipment into one with a larger tank. Is that something that you'd be considering soon after the construction of this, or would it be down the line or longer?
The engine that I'm thinking about is due for replacement. It's 25 years old in 2020, and that's the recommended replacement date, where it drops from being a Class A pump, a frontline pump, being considered a frontline pump, to being considered a second due pump. So at 2020, if on the capital planning of the town that we're going to be able to buy a fire truck, if I was still chief, I would have the committee look at the potential of combining those. Again, one of the situations we get into today is, I'll use an example. We go out on a natural gas call at a station, at a residence, and our meters and our rescue stuff are on the rescue truck. So we want to respond with that so we can react to, we can meter the gas, we can get the gas shut off, we have the tools to take care of that. But if we get to that house and it goes boom, we don't have the right apparatus with us to attack a house fire. So that's why I think this would be one of the opportunities to combine those 2 pieces into one and take that, do we take the rescue or do we take an engine out? Or having to put both on the road, so we don't have to do that. So if I was still chief, I would put the truck committee together and say, evaluate doing this. And similar to what we've done for the station, go through the pros and cons of it all and at least have the opportunity to make the decision of whether to do it or not. Yes, Ernie?
What percentage of the old building is garage and percentage is office? Or 2 rooms or whatever you want to call it?
Yeah, if you look at just the front station, I would say it's 50-50. There's a little office off the garage on the bottom, but the whole first floor is garage space. And the second floor, which doesn't quite go all the way to the back, is all office space. Now, if you add in the back station as well, you're probably at about a 33 to 40% is office space versus 60 to 67% of apparatus floor space. Any other questions? Well, I hope I helped educate, or I hope David and I both helped educate you on this project, and just encourage you to get out and vote as you'd like to vote. And I thank you very much for coming tonight and paying attention to me. Thanks.